Hi everyone, I'm Ankur Joshi. I'm the founder and CEO of Nuclei. Nuclei is where we work with banks and telcos and help them with their digital transformation journeys through our products. Today on this podcast, I'm honored and excited to welcome an inspiration leader, Frederic de Melker, who has been a banker for more than 20 years. He has been heading, variety of positions in the bank, variety of leadership positions across personal as well as wealth banking, and is widely regarded as an authority on these topics and verticals. Welcome to the podcast, Fred, and really excited to host you. So let me begin with knowing a bit more about your personal journey before we move on to discussing about what's going on with your life, what are the next steps.
All right. Well, first of all, Ankur, thank you for having me. The personal journey. Like what you said during your introduction, I've been a retail banker for many, many years in different countries, Europe, Middle East, which is UAE and Egypt. And instead of discussing my full CV with you, I think the most important part will be the last 4 or 5 years. During my time in Egypt, in a country where you have more than 100 million people, where you have a very solid banking network and branch network, but I was working for a bank with 70 branches all over the country. And then you see around you how digital disruption in the industry was shaping up. At that time you start thinking as a banker like, oh wow, do I really know what is going on around me, or should I go a little bit more in depth? And I went to Silicon Valley for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Had some very interesting meetings and discussions with the top guys, like people from Tesla, Netflix. And when I was flying back to the Middle East, I was sitting in that plane 16 hours, so enough time to reflect. And I thought to myself, my God, if I'm not going to change, then maybe within 5 years, I have no job anymore. Now, today we're 5 years later, and I had a job, but I decided myself to step out of that very specific world of retail banking in an old-fashioned way. So yeah, during the last 3-4 years, I worked hard on how to transform the banks in payment, but also from a platform point of view, like robo-advice, insurance, how to bring products and services to customers in a way that the customer thinks it's more convenient and really meeting the needs. Yeah. Correct. So yeah, it was very exciting 4 or 5 years.
Oh, amazing to know that. You're also awarded Finnovator of the Year at the latest in 2021. So how do you, and I've having known you for a long time now, I know you are very entrepreneurial energy, right? It's very refreshing. Not many bankers have this kind of a fabric. So, and you have also spoken about being an entrepreneur, disrupting the bank from within, right? So how do you go about disrupting it from within? What are the key characteristics or success ingredients as a banker that you need for doing this, for executing this?
Yeah, I think, okay, well, entrepreneurship is of course not an easy thing, but entrepreneurship is I think as difficult but different. But for me, at least, that period of entrepreneurship was the right journey to come to a point like today, to move into like the real stuff, you can say. Entrepreneurship, I think, is something which banks are still lacking. I had some numbers in 2019. I was reading an Accenture report, and that's only 2 years ago, stating that only 12% of the banks are having a real disruptive digital strategy. 38% they think they have something, and 50% are clueless. So that means that among the bankers, there are not too many people who are true entrepreneurs. And I think that is a link to the fact that risk-taking from a career perspective and trying to stay part of a group, and within that group having a vast majority of the people locked into groupthink, right? I think that is a real issue for banks. I'm for instance, I'm not a blockchain specialist. I did some academics around it, so to understand what it is. So I will certainly not be an expert, but in the banking industry, everybody's talking about blockchain, but nobody knows what it is. So these buzzwords is a, well, you can say a glossary of vocabulary of statements that bankers use, but yeah, mainly empty boxes. Because banks, they try to solve their problems from a P&L perspective, and you cannot solve it from a P&L perspective. You cannot simply wash away your old systems and start from scratch, and that is what fintechs can do. They can start from scratch. Another point is they cannot say, okay, let's focus on one thing, right? At the end of the day, it's a big oil tanker that needs to be renewed. Simply building a speedboat next to it, what a lot of them are doing is also not a solution, because you still need to move that old tanker, right? What are the main issues, I think, from entrepreneurship point of view, while that activity is so low? Well, first of all, the knowledge and experience. Secondly, the complexity. People are still working in their own silos, and if you want to solve things, you need to go across these silos, which is very difficult.
Correct.
You have, of course, the political system. You have that everywhere, but yeah, in the bank, it's very specific. Again, in between the silos, for instance.
Correct.
But even if you have one person at the top who is not managing that well, I mean, you get nowhere. And then, of course, yeah, there's the career aspect as well. I mean, most bankers who have something to say or senior enough to take decisions are mainly 50 plus. And when you're 50 plus, do you really want to rock the boat, or do you want to say, okay, well, let's see what happens? So yeah, if from a personal perspective, these were the main issues. Two things: if you talk to somebody and you end up with, okay, or they don't understand me, right, or I'm wrong, and you're absolutely sure that you're not wrong, okay, then that's the time where you will need to start deciding, okay, I can stay within this world and keep pushing, fine. Or is it more valuable for yourself, but also for your environment and for the industry, to move out of that part of the financial industry and start moving in the more dynamic side?
Yeah. But see, if you from a holistic perspective, banks are a very, very powerful platform, right? They have a lot of distribution. As you rightly put that, they are a big oil tanker. Fintechs are some entities which can start from scratch. But the bigger difference is that an oil tanker has a lot of distribution. Fintechs generally, while starting from scratch, are also starting from scratch on the distribution side. So what is your opinion of, is it a collaborative industry, or is it a collaboration between fintechs and banks, which is going to, where a fintech is essentially leveraging the distribution of the bank, which is going to eventually win? Or do you think fintechs are going to completely disrupt the banks over the next 5-10 years?
It's a good question. It depends, of course, a little bit what kind of a fintech we're talking about, right? You have fintechs that want to compete with banks in certain areas. You have fintechs that want to find solution for banks to make their distribution network more solid for the future. Now, banks have the distribution network. right? I fully agree with that. But that is today. Huh? But that will change. I mean, there was Mike Corbat was the CEO of Citi a couple of years ago. He started saying, and that was in 2013 or something. Yeah, we are becoming a tech company, and we're going to bring Citi to that level. 5 years later, he comes with a statement: no, fintechs will do the work, but we have the network, we have the customer. But let's be honest, that still counts for the financial industry. But if you go into other industries, I don't think so, right? I mean, are supermarkets still having the full distribution? Maybe yes, but at the other hand, if you see what home delivery is doing, it's a big disruption. Okay, I don't want to be silly and going back to the same statements like so many people are using, but Amazon is still a very nice story about books, right? I mean, in the past, somebody started with a digital platform for books, and the bookstores were having the network. Well, where are the bookstores now? They're gone. So the story about banks having the network is for me, well, very, very short term, right? And short term is relative, right? It can be 5, 10, 15 years, but it is short term. So are fintechs going to take over? I think that new banks will be developed, right? And that will be partly from merging old banks or existing banks with big fintech players in the future, right? You will have big fintech initiatives that will be bought by banks and then become a bank, or the other way around. So new competition coming within the space. The problem today, the only problem the fintechs are having today is that audience, right? I mean, getting to the customer. While banks have today a different problem. Like, yes, I can go to the customer, but not in a way that the customer wants to be served, right? And these are the two powers against each other, you can say. But that audience, that customer base, I think that is the most important. Who is going to adopt your service, right? And yeah, that's a big question mark.
Taking cue from there, you're now moving on from your banking experience and becoming an entrepreneur. And this is one of the problems that you're trying to solve by building a platform. So why don't you briefly describe what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and where are you with it? What's the next steps?
Yeah, well, fundamentally, and that really goes back to the discussion we had just now. It's about that audience, right? And that audience was in the past part of a banking industry, right? If you wanted, if you as a customer, you want financial products and services, you had to become part of an ecosystem, right? And that can be, you can be with one bank, but that was something that happened till the 90s. You had one bank. From the 90s, it moved into, but I can have several banks because I have an account over there and some products here and whatever. But that is now evolving, and that is because of digital disruption, should evolve into a personal ecosystem, right? So being part of an ecosystem, how can I build my own ecosystem where I don't need to go to banks anymore? I don't even need to go to fintechs, right? They come to me and I will say, okay, I need a personal loan today. Who is going to give me the loan, and who is going to bid for my needs? And I think that is something in the next 10 years which will change the market, right? It changed already a lot of other industries, but the banking industry will be becoming part of a personal ecosystem where you as a customer decide what you want to do, what you want to take, what you want to buy. And now still we think in products, but maybe tomorrow it's part of products, right? I mean, there is so many things you can imagine if you build a personal ecosystem. And that is something that keeps me busy at night. How can you construct a concept, a platform that really meets the needs of that specific customer? The banks are always promising, yeah, we're personalizing, or you're a priority banking customer, or you are an elite customer, or whatever, and it's your personal needs and that we will meet with our products and services. And we all know that's not true, right? It's impossible because you cannot have one player doing that. So how can we build something around that customer so that the industry is in touch with him or her instead of the other way around? And that is something that I'm focusing on.
That's a very powerful concept. Essentially, you are moving the power center and making the customer the center of the overall platform, and the power will now lie with the customer, who can then go and shop around whatever they require. So that's a very powerful platform to build. Which other platforms, and these platforms could be across industries, right? Not just necessarily from the financial industry, but which other platforms are you most impressed by? There are quite a few books. I mean, of course, Innovator's Dilemma is Christensen, which is a very powerful book around how do you create a disruptive innovation instead of a sustainable innovation. Or there is also a book around modern monopolies, which is written on a variety of platform models which have come up in the last 15, 20 years. Which other platforms are you most impressed with, and why?
Well, I think if you talk about marketplace, there is one global player, right? And it's very interesting to see. I think what is and that's an Amazon, for instance. It's not because of its Amazon. What is very interesting about Amazon is that it's a global platform that fits into every culture, right? And in one way, and I think that is key, because you can build a platform and then say, okay, well, the customer will like this. But there is a lot of culture involved in how you build your platform, how you communicate with customers, right? And that will be different in India than, for instance, in Europe or Belgium. That's even different for Belgium and the Netherlands, two very small countries next to each other, right? So how to translate that mentality, that cultural aspect into a platform is very important. I'm also, from much smaller scale, very impressed by a lot of fintechs who are at least solving part of that ecosystem problem, and who try to start aggregating certain product sets, right? Like Policy Bazaar, for instance. You have Grab in Singapore, where that initial step of like, well, we go to an open architecture for every single product, not only for wealth, what we have behind us, but now you need to take it a step further, right? And that's not only communicating with a customer and saying, these are the 20 things you can choose from. The hit is there, like, I know what you need, and I will translate your need to that third party. So now what these platforms are doing is like, here I have everything, and you choose. No, there needs to be a communication between the product provider, service provider, and that end customer. And if we talk about the future of banks, then I think that banks, instead of being so hands-on to keep their distribution network going, I think they should start thinking more about how they champion the products, right? How they build products that really are 100% meeting these very specific customer needs. Can you imagine that a bank can drop the energy for distribution and put all its energy into building the right products? I mean, it would be a totally different world, different approach, but I think it's part of the future.
Yeah, quite a few banks across the globe have actually done that. So you have banks across Russia or Spain, or in fact even UK, who have been successful in changing the DNA of the organization and then becoming very, very customer obsessed. So it is possible, although it is.
But it's only 12% of all the banks.
Yeah.
So it's still a lot of work to be done.
Correct.
And we also need to be sure that not, if you see in other industries like retail, grocery shopping, whatever, it is fairly okay that you only have a few players, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to buy X and somebody delivers it to your door. And if it is this player, is that player, if it is an Amazon or it's a Noon or it's a Flipkart or whatever, fine, right? You have the product.
Correct.
Within the banking industry, you also need to be sure that there is still enough competition so that banks are really playing it against each other, because competition is only benefiting the customer, right? And so it is important that we are not stuck with this 12% of banks really being on the right track. We really need to be sure that more banks are stepping into that direction. And I think their fintechs play a big role in leading them by example, showing them that things can be done differently, and yeah, partner up with them.
Oh, okay. This is really good. Thank you. Now coming back to your personal journey and your entrepreneurial journey, which is just getting started. So many people in the industry, including me, look up to you as a leader. So if anyone wants to work with you in your journey, what advice would you have for them, or how can they make it happen?
Well, you need to be 100% driven by passion, and it needs to go fast. I mean, and it goes fast because of the passion. If you want to change something, okay, people say change a stone in the river and the river will flow differently, right? No, I think the river keeps flowing, right? It's not stoppable. I think that it is a risk, right? I mean, it is a different life, right? You know better, right? Yeah. And the reward is not immediately, but if you look any example, even in the past, even before the digital revolution, right? The people that changed the world were people that were not always understood, right? Were not always followed or supported, but were simply so 100% sure about this can happen and this should happen. I mean, and that is a drive that human beings can have. And yeah, people working with me or I working with people, I mean, have that in common, I think. And some people at a more junior level and they like to learn from other people. But I'm very much inspired by very young guys. And now my first steps into entrepreneurship, and you talk to developers and you talk to so many people around you, and you start having discussions with guys from 25, 26 years old, then the only thing I said, wow, I was not that dynamic at that age. So I think, yeah, the future is very bright with people who grew up with digital, and because they know how it has to change. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Knowing you, I know your passion is literally physically infectious, right? So anyone who gets to work with you would be lucky to work with you. So I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me end this conversation with asking you a personal question. Tell me the kindest thing that someone has done for you.
The kindest thing that somebody else did for me?
Yeah.
It would be my wife.
Yeah.
Simply following and saying, okay, if you say so and you want to do this, then you have to go for it. And I think that is important. Your environment, your family, your friends who are supporting you, certainly in this first stage, like, okay, if you believe that something can happen, then we believe it with you, and let's go for it. And that is the kindest thing that people can do for you, is supporting you and helping you to realize your goal, your dream, whatever.
I love that answer. I really love that answer.
Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you, Fred.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on to this
Thank you,
podcast.
Ankur.
And really look forward to working together in future. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for your time, the opportunity. And yeah, we speak each other again for sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Take care.
Thank you.